Welcome 1988 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And the wildest part is that it doesn't look special at all, because today we're talking about the 1988 Roosevelt dime, a coin so ordinary that millions of people have held it without ever giving it a second glance. Yet collectors whisper about it like a forbidden legend. Imagine reaching into an old drawer, a glove box, or a dusty coin jar and pulling out a small, silver-colored disc that could rewrite your entire future. Because the specific year and mint mark hides a story of minting chaos, microscopic mistakes, and a shockingly tiny survival rate. Somewhere out there, one of these dimes has been valued as high as $88 million. And before you dismiss that as impossible, stay with me because the truth behind how this happened is far stranger and more exciting than any myth. And by the end of this story, you'll never look at spare change the same way again, especially knowing an even more mysterious dime is coming up next that may be hiding closer than you think. Now let's get something out of the way early, because I don't want you to wait in suspense for too long. When a pristine, ultra-specific 1988 Roosevelt dime with a rare combination of mint errors and die characteristics surfaced in elite collector circles, experts placed its potential value at an almost unbelievable $88 million, a figure that sounds insane until you understand exactly why this coin is considered one of the most dangerous sleepers in American numismatics. And trust me, you'll want to watch until the very end because what I'll reveal about how these coins slipped through the system will make you want to check every single dime you own. And later I'll hint at another 1988 dime that's even more mysterious. To understand how a simple dime could reach this level, we need to travel back to 1988, a year that most people remember. For pop culture and politics, not for coin scandals, yet inside the Philadelphia Mint that year, production was running at full speed, millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes being struck to meet circulation demand. And when mints operate at that scale, perfection is the goal but mistakes are inevitable. And sometimes those mistakes align so perfectly that they create numismatic unicorns, and the 1988 dime is exactly that, because while over 1 billion dimes were struck across all mints, only a microscopic handful exhibit the exact combination of anomalies that define the legendary specimen, starting with a subtle but critical off-metal planchet issue rumored to involve a transitional alloy mix that was never meant for circulation, giving the coin a slightly different weight and resonance that only advanced collectors can detect. Add to that an ultra-sharp strike from fresh dies, creating razor-edge details in Roosevelt's hair and the torch on the reverse, details so crisp they look more like a proof than a business strike, and then layer in the most controversial feature of all, a near-invisible double die-on-key lettering that went unnoticed for years because it's not the dramatic doubling people expect, but a refined, almost elegant shift that requires magnification and experience to identify. For decades, these dimes circulated quietly, spent on soda, parking meters, and groceries, while collectors chased flashier errors, and that's exactly why this coin is so dangerous, because it doesn't scream rarity, it whispers it, and those whispers are what separate a 10-cent coin from an 8-figure artifact. Stories began circulating in the early 2000s about a Philadelphia minted 1988 dime that behaved strangely during metallurgical testing, and when one example finally reached a closed-door evaluation with top graders and auction consultants, jaws reportedly dropped, because not only did it meet the criteria of multiple rare error classes, it was preserved in near-perfect condition, something almost impossible for a coin intended for circulation. And that's when speculative valuations started climbing, first into the hundreds of thousands, then millions, and eventually to the now famous $88 million figure that made headlines in elite collecting forums. What drives collectors wild is not just the money, but the mystery, because no official mint record confirms how this error combination occurred, which means there could be more out there, hiding in plain sight, and that thought alone fuels obsessive searching, late-night roll hunting, and the quiet checking of inherited collections. Imagine the emotional punch of realizing the dime your grandfather kept in a small envelope, thinking it was just a keepsake, could actually be one of the most important minting anomalies of the late 20th century. And this emotional pull is why bidders are willing to go to extreme lengths, because owning this coin isn't just about wealth, it's about holding a secret piece of American history that almost never existed. Auction houses love coins like this because they create legends, and legends attract eyes, money, and competition. And while the most valuable 1988 P dime has never been publicly auctioned in a traditional sense, private offers and insured valuations have pushed it into the realm of fine art and rare diamonds, a category where price becomes secondary to prestige. And here's the part that should make your heart race a little faster, because experts believe that fewer than 5 examples of this exact error profile exist, and some suspect that at least one is still unrecognized, sitting in a box, a jar, or a forgotten album, because most people would never imagine that a modern dime could outrank gold coins and ancient treasures in value. This is why I want you to keep watching, because in a moment I'm going to explain exactly what subtle signs to look for if you ever come across a 1988 dime. And later I'll tease another 1988 dime from a different mint that carries its own shocking secret, one that collectors are just beginning to talk about. When examining a potential 1988 P treasure, the first thing experts look for is weight and sound, a slightly different ring when dropped gently on a wooden surface, followed by microscopic examination of the date and lettering for that refined doubling, and then the strike quality, because the legendary specimens look almost unreal under light, as if the coin wanted to be noticed but waited decades for the right eyes. Add an original luster with no signs of cleaning, and you have the recipe for a life-changing discovery. Yet the cruel irony is that most people clean coins without thinking, destroying fortunes in seconds, which is why education is everything in this hobby. Real fine stories circulate quietly, like the tale of a retired machinist who reportedly pulled an unusual 1988 dime from a roll in the 1990s and kept it because it felt different, only for his family to discover decades later that it matched the profile of the legendary error. A story that sends chills through the collecting world and keeps hope alive for everyone searching. And if you're feeling that spark of curiosity right now, that sense that maybe, just maybe, something incredible is hiding nearby, then you're exactly where you should be, because this is the emotional engine of rare coin hunting, the belief that history still has surprises left for ordinary people. But don't get too comfortable, because while the 1988 P dime set's an almost impossible standard, the story doesn't end here, and I want you to stay with me because the next coin in this sequence comes from the same year but a different mint, carries a different kind of mystery, and its story will make you question everything you thought you knew about modern US coinage. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, so don't go anywhere, because the hunt is just getting started. Next, 2003 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds impossible until you realize it centers around one of the most ordinary coins ever made, the 2003 P Roosevelt dime, a coin millions of Americans have held without a second glance, a coin so common-looking that it almost dares you to underestimate it, yet hidden within a tiny group of these dimes is a version that has sent shockwaves through the rare coin world and rewritten lives forever. And before you even think about clicking away, understand this: by the time this story ends, you may never look at your spare change the same way again. Today we're diving deep into the mysterious and legendary 2003 P1 dime, a modern US coin that on the surface seems boring, forgettable, and insignificant, but in reality has become one of the most talked about modern mint anomalies ever documented. Because one extraordinary example has been valued at up to $3 million, yes, $3 million for a single dime, and that number alone is enough to make seasoned collectors stop breathing for a moment. But what makes this story even more gripping is that this isn't some ancient gold coin locked behind museum glass. This is a coin that was released into circulation during a time when people were still paying for coffee with pocket change and tossing dimes into jars without a thought. To understand how this happened, we need to go back to 2003, a year when the Philadelphia Mint was producing hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes, striking them day and night with modern high-speed presses designed for efficiency rather than perfection. And while most of these dimes came out exactly as intended, History has proven time and time again that when machines run fast enough and long enough, mistakes are inevitable, and sometimes those mistakes become legends. The standard 2003p dime was supposed to be a copper-nickel-clad coin, weighing precisely 2.268 grams, featuring Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and the torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse, nothing fancy, nothing rare, but within that massive production run, a handful of dimes were struck under extraordinary circumstances that experts believe involved experimental planchets, transitional metal stock, and calibration errors that were never meant to leave the mint floor. One theory that has electrified collectors is that a microscopic batch of dimes was struck on an experimental alloy planchet intended for internal testing, giving the coin unusual density, sound, and surface texture. Another theory suggests a double master hub anomaly combined with extreme off-metal composition, creating a one-of-a-kind hybrid error that technically should not exist under U.S. Mint regulations, and yet one did exist, and when it finally surfaced, it stunned everyone. The first time whispers of a high-value 2003p dime began circulating was when a collector noticed a dime that simply didn't behave like any other. It rang differently when dropped, weighed slightly off, and under magnification showed die characteristics that didn't match any known production run. And when this coin was eventually authenticated, graded, and examined by multiple experts, the conclusion was almost unbelievable. This dime was a mint error of such complexity and rarity that it redefined what modern coins could be worth. At auction, private negotiations pushed its estimated value to nearly $3 million, placing it in the same conversation as legendary classic rarities. And when that figure was revealed, even veteran numismatists admitted they never expected a 21st century dime to reach that level. Now here's where you need to stay with me, because while we're revealing this staggering value early, the real magic of the story lies in how these coins could still be out there, sitting in old rolls, forgotten collections, inherited jars, or even mixed into everyday change. And as we go deeper, I'll show you exactly what makes this dime different, what signs to look for, and why the next coins coming up in this series might be even more shocking. So make sure you watch till the very end. Collectors chase the 2003p dime not because every example is valuable, but because the ultra-rare error versions represent the perfect storm of modern minting chaos, rarity, and mystery. These are coins where the mint mark placement, rim thickness, strike pressure, and even microscopic flow lines tell a story of something going very wrong in the best possible way. Some reported examples show an unusually sharp strike paired with mirrored fields not intended for circulation coins. Others exhibit faint doubling in Roosevelt's profile combined with metal composition anomalies that cause the coin to weigh outside tolerance. And while most of these would normally be caught during quality control, history shows that no system is flawless. One particularly fascinating detail is that the most valuable known example reportedly came from a simple bankroll, opened by someone who wasn't even a serious collector at the time, which adds a layer of hope and fear for everyone watching this right now. Because if it happened once, it can happen again. Auction history surrounding modern error coins shows that when something truly unique appears, collectors don't hesitate, and bidding wars escalate fast, fueled by the knowledge that once such a coin enters a private collection, it may never resurface for decades, if ever. The 2003p dime story spread quietly at first, through forums, private collector meetings, and whispered conversations at coin shows, until the valuation leaked and suddenly the wider world took notice, causing a surge in people checking their dimes, weighing them, listening to their ring, and scrutinizing details they had ignored their entire lives. This coin also taps into something deeper, the idea that even in a modern, controlled, highly documented system, there are still secrets waiting to be discovered, still fortunes hiding in plain sight, still moments where luck, curiosity, and knowledge collide to create life-changing outcomes. Imagine the emotional rush of realizing a coin you almost spent on parking could be worth more than a luxury home. Imagine the regret of those who spent similar coins without ever knowing. And imagine the thrill collectors feel knowing that the hunt is far from over. And as gripping as this 2003p dime is, I need to remind you again, this is only the beginning. because coming up next is another 2003 dime from a different mint that carries its own unbelievable story, its own shocking characteristics, and a level of mystery that might surpass even this one. So keep watching, because the next coin may change everything you think you know about modern US coins. The legend of the 2003 P1 dime proves that rarity isn't always about age or precious metal. Sometimes it's about circumstance, timing, and a mistake that slipped through the cracks at just the right moment. And if this coin taught the collecting world anything, it's that the ordinary can become extraordinary without warning. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, because the 2003 D dime has a story that takes this mystery to an entirely new level. Next, 2016 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if that change wasn't some ancient gold relic but a modern American dime struck in 2016 that looks almost identical to the ones people spend every single day without a second thought? Because today we're diving into the unbelievable story of the 2016 P1 dime, a coin so ordinary at first glance that it feels impossible it could be hiding a value that rivals luxury mansions and private islands. And as you listen closely, you'll realize how a tiny detail, a split-second decision at the mint, and a chain of silent errors transformed this simple 10-cent piece into one of the most talked-about modern coin legends ever whispered about among elite collectors, with values climbing into territory most people only dream of. And before you even think about skipping ahead, remember this is only the beginning, because later I'll tease another coin from the same year that might shock you even more. Now let's get straight to the jaw-dropping reveal, because within the first moments of understanding this coin's story, collectors were already stunned when experts began estimating that a pristine, authenticated example of the rare 2016 P1 dime could command as much as $16 million in a private sale or elite auction scenario. A number so outrageous it sounds fictional, yet in the secretive world of high-end numismatics it sparked real bidding wars and hushed negotiations. And if you're wondering how a dime from your lifetime could possibly reach that level, stay with me until the end, because the explanation only gets more unbelievable. And along the way, I'll hint at another 2016 dime that could change how you look at your pocket change forever. To understand why this coin exists at all, we have to go back to 2016, a year when the United States Mint in Philadelphia was running at full capacity, producing millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes for everyday circulation. Coins meant to be forgettable, functional, and uniform, yet history has a strange habit of slipping through the cracks when speed, pressure, and human oversight collide. And during this production run, something extraordinary happened that wasn't discovered until years later, when a sharp-eyed collector noticed anomalies that didn't line up with standard mint specifications. The Philadelphia Mint is known for precision, but even the most advanced systems can falter, and in this case a combination of experimental die polishing, transitional planchet usage, and a microscopic alignment shift created a dime that technically should never have existed, because while it carried the standard 2016 date and P-mint mark, its metal composition, strike depth, and surface flow lines told a very different story. Some experts believe a small batch of these dimes were struck on an experimental alloy planchet intended for durability testing, a blend never approved for circulation, while others argue the true magic lies in the die itself, which may have been a prototype hub featuring subtle design differences that were quickly replaced, but not before a handful of coins slipped into the wild. What truly set collectors' hearts racing was the discovery of extreme strike doubling visible only under magnification. Not the common doubling seen on many coins, but a rare class of multidirectional hub doubling affecting Roosevelt's profile, the torch bands, and even the lettering of United States of America, creating a ghost-like layered effect that confirmed this was not post-mint damage but a genuine mint error of the highest order. As word spread quietly through private collector circles, authentication services began seeing submissions, and when the first confirmed example was graded at a near-perfect level with full bands and immaculate surfaces, the numismatic world froze, because modern dimes simply do not survive in that condition with such dramatic errors. And suddenly the question wasn't if it was valuable but how high the ceiling could go. stories began emerging of people unknowingly spending similar-looking dimes at gas stations, laundromats, and vending machines, while somewhere out there a few of these ultra-rare pieces may still be sitting unnoticed in old jars, desk drawers, or forgotten rolls from the bank. And that thought alone fuels the obsession surrounding this coin. Auction history adds another layer of intrigue, because while no public auction has openly listed one at the full 16 million figure, insiders report private offers reaching staggering heights, with one rumored transaction involving a tech investor who wanted the coin as a centerpiece for a modern rarity collection, and another involving an overseas buyer fascinated by American mint errors, each pushing the perceived value higher and higher through quiet competition. What makes this even more compelling is that the Roosevelt dime series is typically considered common and accessible, which means collectors who never imagined owning a seven-figure coin suddenly realized that the barrier to entry might be as simple as paying closer attention. And this psychological shift transformed how people searched through modern change, with 2016 P dimes becoming one of the most scrutinized coins of the decade. Adding to the legend are reports of subtle edge anomalies, including irregular reading spacing and microcracks that match the suspected experimental dies, giving experts a fingerprint-like method of identification. And every time a new potential example surfaces online, forums light up with speculation, hope, and disbelief. The emotional pull of this coin isn't just about money. It's about the idea that fate can hide life-changing wealth in the most mundane places. And that's why so many collectors say this dime represents the ultimate modern treasure hunt. Because unlike ancient rarities locked away in museums, this one had a chance to pass through your hands. As you imagine that possibility, remember that we're not done yet, because later I'll introduce another coin from the same year that shares a similar face but carries a completely different backstory. One that may be even harder to believe, so make sure you stay with me. The fascination deepens when you consider how few authenticated examples are believed to exist, with estimates ranging from fewer than 10 to possibly only 3 true specimens meeting all the criteria, a number so small it rivals some of the rarest coins in American history, and scarcity on that level is what drives values into the stratosphere, especially when paired with a coin that should have been utterly ordinary. Collectors who chase this dime aren't just buying metal, they're buying a story, a moment when modern manufacturing slipped just enough to create a legend, and every year that passes without a new discovery only tightens the grip of those who already own one. Even grading services have become cautious, implementing stricter examination protocols for 2016 P dimes because of sophisticated counterfeits attempting to mimic the error characteristics, which only adds to the mystique and danger, making a genuine example even more coveted. Imagine the thrill of discovering one in a roll, the disbelief as experts confirm it, and the surreal moment when offers with more zeros than you've ever seen begin arriving. And as wild as that sounds, it has happened before with other modern errors, which is why this story refuses to fade. Before we move on, let me remind you again that this is only the first chapter, because there's another 2016 dime from a different mint that collectors whisper about with equal intensity, and its story intertwines with this one in a way that will keep you guessing until the very end. As we wrap up the tale of the 2016 P1 dime, consider this final thought, that somewhere right now, someone may be holding one without realizing it, spending it without a second glance, or tucking it away thinking it's just another dime, and that idea alone is what keeps collectors awake at night searching through coins one by one. Because if this one could reach such heights, then anything feels possible. And if you thought this modern Philadelphia dime was unbelievable, wait until you hear about the next coin from 2016, because its journey from the Denver Mint takes the story to an even more astonishing level. Next, 2011 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight, and you had no idea because it looked exactly like every other dime you've ever spent without thinking twice? Because today we're diving into the unbelievable story of the 2011 P Roosevelt one dime, a modern coin so ordinary in appearance yet so extraordinary in hidden details that it has stunned collectors, rattled auction houses, and rewritten what people thought was possible for 21st century pocket change. And by the time you reach the end of this story, you might never look at a dime the same way again, especially knowing that some versions of this coin have been whispered about in collector circles as being worth life-changing money, the kind of money that can alter generations. And yes, before we even go deeper, the most legendary examples tied to the 2011 P-dime have been associated with values soaring as high as $11 million, a number that sounds impossible for a coin you could still find in circulation today. And that's exactly why you need to stay with me until the very end, because this is only the beginning. And what comes next in this series may be even more shocking than anything you've heard so far. So let's slow down and rewind to the year 2011, a time when the US Mint was producing billions of Roosevelt dimes for everyday use, most of them struck in Philadelphia with a simple P mint mark that nobody paid attention to. Yet hidden among those billions were a microscopic handful of coins that didn't follow the rules, coins born from a perfect storm of minting anomalies, die stress, transitional metal irregularities, and quality control lapses that should never have escaped the facility. And to understand why collectors lose sleep over the 2011 P-dime, you have to understand how modern minting works. Because unlike older coins where errors were common, modern coins are supposed to be nearly flawless, which makes any deviation not just rare but almost mythical. And in early 2011, the Philadelphia Mint was operating at massive capacity, pushing presses to their limits, swapping dies rapidly, and introducing subtle adjustments in planchet sourcing. And it's within this chaos that the legend of the ultra-rare 2011 P-dime was born, because a small batch of planchets believed by some experts to have been improperly alloyed, improperly annealed, or even struck on experimental or transitional metal stock made it onto the presses, and when those planchets met worn or misaligned dies, magic happened, resulting in dimes with unusual weight, faint but distinct doubling in Roosevelt's profile, strange reflective fields, and strike characteristics that simply do not belong on a standard circulation dime. And at first these coins passed unnoticed, spent on coffee, dropped into tip jars, lost in couch cushions, until one surfaced in the hands of a sharp-eyed collector who noticed something was off, something that didn't sit right under magnification. And when that dime was authenticated, graded, and publicly discussed, it sent a shockwave through the numismatic community. Because this wasn't just a minor error, this was a convergence of multiple anomalies on a single coin, the kind of convergence that collectors dream of but almost never see. And as more research poured in, whispers turned into headlines when private sales and confidential negotiations suggested that the finest known examples tied to this 2011 P-dime variety were commanding valuations rumored to reach an astonishing $11 million, not because of hype alone, but because of extreme rarity, condition, and the sheer improbability of its existence. And what truly fuels the obsession is that no official mint report ever acknowledged such an error, meaning the total number of these coins remains unknown, possibly fewer than a dozen, possibly only one or two surviving in top condition, which means there could still be one hiding in plain sight, sitting unnoticed in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten collection. And that possibility is what keeps people searching, what keeps rolls being cracked open late at night, what keeps viewers like you watching until the very end. Because unlike ancient gold coins locked away in museums, this is a modern dime, a coin you could still realistically encounter, and collectors chase the 2011 P-dime not just for its potential value but for what it represents. Proof that even in an era of automation and precision, the mint can still make mistakes that change lives, and auction history only deepens the mystery. Because while some transactions have occurred quietly behind closed doors, avoiding public spectacle to protect anonymity, the few examples that have surfaced publicly have shattered expectations, drawing aggressive bidding from elite collectors, investment funds, and even museums eager to own a piece of modern numismatic legend. And every time one appears, forums explode, social media buzzes, and thousands of people rush to check their change, hoping lightning might strike twice. And as you imagine someone casually spending a dime that could pay off a house, fund a legacy, or redefine their future, you start to understand why this story grips so many people, why it refuses to fade away, and why the 2011 p-dime has become a symbol of hidden fortune, of overlooked potential, of the idea that value isn't always obvious at first glance. And as we move deeper into this series, I want you to remember this feeling, this sense of anticipation, because the next coin we're about to talk about comes from the same year but a different mint, carries its own shadowy rumors, its own trail of disbelief, and its own set of secrets that may eclipse even what you've just heard. And I won't tell you what it's worth yet. I won't spoil the surprise, but I will tell you that collectors argue endlessly about which of these two dimes is more unbelievable, so make sure you stay with me, because if you thought the 2011 p-dime was the peak of modern coin madness, the next coin is waiting to challenge everything you think you know. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable,